Hello. It has been a while since I have spoken publicly, so forgive any obvious signs of nervousness. But what I would like to share with you guys tonight are a few stories about what I learned about love from my parents. So, when I was young, I grew up in the States, and my parents came to the US in the early 80s. So there's a bit of culture clashing on pretty much every issue when I was growing up, particularly in the area of relationships. The first thing I learned from my parents about love was do not talk to your parents about love. My parents were like, all right, you're 7, why do you care about girls? Wait until you're in college, wait till you have a degree, then right before you're about to graduate, someone will miraculously come into your life, everything will work out, don't worry about it. And in America, that's not always the case, especially now. So that was one of the first things I learned about love from my parents, is that it's kind of something that you don't need to worry about. It will just happen. And as I got older, I became more interested in love and relationships, as people do. And so when I was in middle school, that adds a whole... okay. I'm just gonna keep going until we find a good volume, I guess. This is my speaking volume. Hopefully it won't go too much louder, too much quieter. All right, are we good? Okay. So when I was in middle school and as I was growing up, I became more interested in relationships. And the next thing I learned about love from my parents was that it's something to be hidden. Do not talk about love, do not talk about relationships, do not talk about the complexities, because my parents didn't understand. I was 12 years old when I had my first girlfriend, and no one in my family knew, not even my cousins, barely any of my friends knew, because I did not want that getting back to my parents. Because for me, and I'm sure many of you guys can understand, things that our parents don't understand are usually resolved by punishment of some sort. Taking away your phone, taking away internet. At least that was the case for me. Although I didn't have a phone, so that was maybe a bad example. But I learned that it was this weird thing, this exciting thing, something that I was so interested in, yet at the same time something that I was not allowed to engage in publicly. So, as I grew up, became older and more American, I was like, parents, you guys don't get it. I'm an adult now. I can make my own decisions. And then that led to my first series of unsuccessful, serious relationships. And that became very confusing for me, because it seemed to be this thing that was always changing. Like, what is love? What are relationships? What are they? How do I engage? How do I interact with this thing that's so important, such a big part of adult life? And as I got older, I learned that love is less about this exciting thing. It's not supposed to, I won't say supposed to, but it's something that everybody engages with differently, and we all engage with in our own way. And usually the best way that we engage with it is when we learn how we engage with it personally, instead of trying to figure out how is it that everyone else does it and how can I make that work for me. So what I learned, the most recent thing I've learned from my parents is that love is very quiet. It's not something that's always loud and in your face and audible via social media or public displays of affection or whatever it is. When I was growing up, my parents didn't kiss, they didn't hold hands, they didn't really have pet names, they didn't really do, marriage things, I guess. Still figuring out what relationships mean, clearly. But it provided me with a very interesting perspective on what long-term relationships are supposed to look like. Because now that I'm older, and now that all of my siblings are older, my parents have become more expressive. And it's really weird, because I'm not sure if it's just because they're getting old and they don't care, or if they're just becoming more Americanized and less repressive with emotional expression. But my mom is in India right now, and she will be for the foreseeable future. And my dad has never been without my mom for more than 2 months. So we're going on almost a year now, a year and a half. And every time I call my dad, He's like, did you talk to your mom? Did you call your mom? What's going on with her? She hasn't been responding to my Facebook messages. And I'm like, I get it. You get left on red too. It happens. And my mom is super busy. She's helping my mom with her mom's, my mom is helping her mom with her orphanage in India. So she's very busy, and so it's very interesting to see this, again, redefined perspective of relationships. And as I've been getting older, I've noticed how big of a role my parents have played on how I view adult relationships and love. And what I've discovered is, because I'm a bit of a nerd, I guess, I enjoy science and stuff, I came up with this little phrase that reminds me that there's not one way to love for any one person. And it's that love is quantum, which basically means, it basically means that, sue me. It basically means that love is many things at one time. And so it can be a very confusing, tense, frustration-wrought experience, or it can be this thing that's total bliss. And also at the same time, it can be both of those things. There can be layers, there can be many nuances. And I guess that's one thing that I'm learning now currently in my personal life, and one thing that I really appreciate my parents for showing me, whether they did it intentionally or not. And so I guess to close, I would like to read a short poem that was shared with me once the feelings come back in my knees. It says, this is a poem by Amy Lowell. It says, when you came, you were like red wine and honey, and the taste of you burnt my mouth with its sweetness. Now you are like morning bread, smooth and pleasant. I hardly taste you at all, for I know your savor, but I am completely nourished. And I really like that. I don't know about you guys, but I really like it because it shows me a relatable side of love, because my parents never had this exuberant, display-based relationship. It was very bizarre to even imagine that they kissed when we weren't looking. So it was just, that's what love is to me, I guess. It can be many things, and it's much more relaxed than we make it seem, especially, at least I feel like in our generation with social media, blah, blah, blah. But that's another story, I guess. That is my piece.
Thank you.